Thank you for joining me. This segment is on the preparation and the mounting of a micromount. As you can see, this specimen here, this is actually a wolfenite from Chile. You can see here, this is temporarily mounted on this white soft putty. This is known as mineral tack, and it's used for temporarily mounting a specimen so that the crystals don't get damaged, so it can have a more permanent mount. This is never acceptable as a permanent mount. It must be firmly attached using an adhesive. And the reason they did it was the bottom part here of the specimen, as you can see, is on a curved surface, and it really wouldn't sit on the pedestal very well. So we're going to trim that up, and I'll show you how to do that. Sometimes in trimming a mineral, like this one here, this happens to be a Hanna Brachite from Germany. The focal point is right here. Here's where the crystal is, and a lot of this is extra material, and that's going to have to be shaved off so that you can see. So that when you look into the microscope, your attention is drawn right to the point of interest. Sometimes your specimens aren't that small, and you have to deal with a very large specimen like this one here, and then it requires bigger tools to do that, bigger splitters. I'd like to show you a splitter that I use here, and this is for a smaller piece of material. This is a splitter we use to cut down the size of the mineral. Now this one here I was just showing you. Now this really has to be trimmed off because this is a lot of excess. It won't even fit in the box this way. But just putting into the jaws here and cutting it, I found sometimes you really can't control which way that cut's going to go. So I like to take my Dremel with the diamond wheel and actually scribe where I want this to cut off to give it a guideline. Much like cutting a brick, you put a score line in, and then you snap it off, and you have a much greater chance of coming out with a usable specimen. But you must really look at the specimen before you attempt any of this to see if there's any cracks, which way they're propagating, so that you get a kind of general idea what's going to happen to this specimen when you do go to split it. So as I was telling you, I use a Dremel, and I have one here. This is actually hooked up to a foot pedal I have on the floor. It's a variable speed, and the foot pedal you can get hardware stores carry them, some specialty catalog places carry them, and the variable speed is nice, so that way I can regulate the speed of this wheel. Now this wheel it's a diamond face wheel, as you can see here. It has both surfaces, and this flat surface is great for flattening out the bottom of the micromount so that it sits on the cork very nicely. The edge also has diamond on it, so if you need to cut into the specimen, or even cut it off if it's small enough, that works very well too. Now, one thing when you're using this diamond wheel to grind away at a stone, I have a vacuum system set up with a little screen and a funnel, because a lot of the dust coming off these minerals are toxic, so you can be very careful. I actually have a dust mask on here, and I'm going to show you how I scribe this before we use that splitter. So if you'll pardon the noise. Now you can always use that to cut straight through, but what I find is it really wears the blades down and creates a lot of dust, and it's really not necessary. Now back to the splitter here, and the idea is to put that groove right into the jaws of the splitter, and you'll see that it snaps very nicely. Let me get that situated right there. That way I have the exact point that I want, and look. It came right off, and now I have a nice specimen that I could work with. Not too large for the box. The point of interest is where it's supposed to be. Some of this can actually be trimmed up on both sides to make it more even in the box, so it's not sticking out in the middle of nowhere. Another specimen here we have here, very delicate. This was actually mounted once before, and it wasn't set up very well, because you can see here the point of interest is right here. So when it was sitting in the box this way, its point of view was straight on, and you really don't get a very good view of that mineral. Get you a better shot here. So it should actually be sitting this way. So all this has to come off. All this has to come off. Even some of this needs to be trimmed, and it'll be a much better specimen. You could tell it'll be sitting in the box like this, and then the point of interest is right in the field of view. After trimming a specimen, they also need to be cleaned, because a lot of times they're sitting out in the open and they're not protected. You get a lot of dust on them, little hairs, fibers all through the mineral, and the last thing you want to do is look at that magnified. What I found works best is to clean the mineral after it's mounted. And what I've done is, let me show you what I have here. I've made a little, it's actually a caliper. After I mount the specimen on, I actually attach it to the caliper, and this suspends into my ultrasonic cleaner, so that as it cleans, the particles fall down, instead of this way where it just kind of lay flat right on top of the specimen. You actually want to wash them away. This will hold 2 or a real long specimen, and this just sits just a little bit up the cork, because you don't want to saturate the cork too much, because they'll start to expand on you. And this will sit in the ultrasonic cleaner. And in the ultrasonic cleaner, I like to use some dishwasher liquid, or in this case it's powder. This is a Cascade, and the reason I like to use this is it has a wetting agent in it that stops spots from forming, and that's really important, especially if you're doing a dark mineral like this azurite here. You could just imagine how horrible that would look with little water spots all over those beautiful blue crystals. So that's the reason for the dishwashing liquid and dishwasher liquid. And I haven't found that it hurt any minerals I put in there. Just make sure they're not water soluble minerals. And again, when you clean it, you want to clean it this way, so that all the debris actually falls down into the bottom of the ultrasonic cleaner. Well, let's take this here. This is again, this is the wolfenite from Chile, and the reason it wasn't sitting very well in that cork is, as you can see on the bottom here, it's not very flat, and they put that putty in there to try and hold it into place. But we're gonna try and clean that up a little bit so that it does sit flat and gives us a nice surface to glue to. And again, pardon the noise. Now you can see how fast that goes. I mean, it's a very soft material. I think I just want to trim that just a little bit more. We're going to trim it just a little bit more off of this corner, so that sits a little flatter. There. And now I picked the proper size pedestal. Now remember, you want this to sit nice and flat. You don't want it to be on an angle of any sort. So find the correct cork that you want, so that you don't see this. You don't see that sitting there, and see how nicely that sits on top of that specimen. Now let's put a little bit of glue on that. And the glue I like to use, it's a jeweler's glue. 527, some multi-purpose cement. It's available in your hobby stores, hardware stores. It's fast drying. It doesn't react to liquids. It's a permanent glue, and I like to apply it with a toothpick, so I can regulate. I have some glue right here on the pad. I like to regulate the amount of glue I put on, because you really don't want to squeeze it out all over the place. And it's nice to glue both surfaces. So here, and it sets up fast, but not too fast. You want to be able to readjust it. But once it's where it's supposed to be, you really want this to dry fast. There you go.